I want to bring in Alex Wagner because she is where she needs to be. She is literally right on the floor here at the DNC. We want to know what you're hearing, seeing, what's going on, my friend.
It's a challenging sound environment, but as your chief vibes correspondent, I'm here to tell you that the vibrations are very positive tonight. Maybe even more anticipatorily positive than they were last night, which was, as you know well, Joy, an enormously positive event for Joe Biden. I think that there's a lot of excitement for, two of the great figures in the Democratic Party. Not just because I think people are eager to see some of the Obama-era magic grafted onto the Harris-Walz campaign, but I think for a Democratic Party that in the Trump years sort of wondered whether Barack Obama was an aberration, whether he was an historic anomaly. The mere presence of Barack Obama at this convention handing the reins off to Kamala Harris is a suggestion that the aberration was Donald Trump. And that America, as Barack Obama liked to invoke, is the universe is the moral arc of the universe is long, but is bending towards a sort of justice, a more inclusive society. That Barack Obama and Kamala Harris are the true sort of political future for America, and that Donald Trump was merely one step backwards before the inevitable pendulum swing forward. So I think there's this sense of not just excitement for the immediate future of the Democratic Party, but about the long-term prospects of American society. And that's really, a terribly intoxicating 1-2 punch for people in the audience tonight. There's just an enormous amount of excitement on the floor. And I was talking to one of the delegates from Florida who was saying, you know what? Anything can happen. This is the state of Florida where Republican, registrants outnumber Democrats by 1 million. And look, if Florida's feeling optimistic, wow, that's all I got to say.
I know, as a former Floridian, we always take Florida optimism with a huge grain of salt and a giant orange. But we'll see what happens, and there's a reason to be optimistic. There's a lot there. I do want to follow up a little bit on your point, Alex, and ask you to say more. Because earlier, Nicole Wallace, our wonderful friend Nicole Wallace, was talking about the ways in which the Harris-Walz ticket has kind of shoved Donald Trump off of the stage. And I think about the Obamas in that same way, right? And, Barack Obama is the guy who embarrassed Donald Trump at a White House Correspondents' Dinner, so much so that Donald Trump vowed to become president. And his presidency is seen as so many ways as rejectionism against Obama. The anger and rage that this man had been a black president for 2 terms produced Donald Trump's presidency. What are you hearing and what are people saying about the idea that maybe Kamala Harris has sort of ended the Trump era, right? I mean, because there is that sort of sense that this era was a hot fire that can't continue to burn forever, and that maybe the antidote is Kamala Harris, Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, this gargantuan teamwork of the Democratic Party.
Well, I mean, I've heard some, people are very articulate in their enthusiasm, but they always end it with, we have work ahead. It's going to be a tight election. People understand that this, Kamala Harris hasn't run away with this by a long shot, right? So nobody's ready to write the epigraph for the Trump years. But I do think, it's a powerful suggestion, right? That Barack Obama is the future, that Kamala Harris is the future, and that Donald Trump is the past. And indeed, that demographic reality lies at the core of so much of Donald Trump's power over his audience, right? The idea that a multicultural, inclusive America is actually the road we're heading down, and that the sort of white patriarchal society that allowed Donald Trump to profiteer as much as he has is going into the rear view, right? That's a powerful, distressing idea if you are part of the white patriarchy like Donald Trump, and supporters who see change, who see people like Barack Obama, who see people like Kamala Harris, multi-ethnic, multiracial, progressive leaders, and are scared of that vision, right? The idea that this might be the norm, and that Trumpism and MAGAism are the things of yesterday rearing their heads for one last gasp, man, that's powerful stuff. And I think, one of the great things about the way Kamala Harris and Barack Obama have handled this is they don't they don't sort of allude to that reality with fear or with triumphalism, but they say we can all be part of the future no matter what the color of our skin is. And I think indeed tonight it's going to be that classic Obama. I'm not sure that he's going to say there is no red America, there is no blue America, there's only the United States of America, but I think that idea that we're all in it together, that ism is going to be something we hear about, because Kamala Harris is a direct manifestation of that, and their friendship was forged over that reality.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the vibe tonight from our friend Alex Wagner is profundity, and we always appreciate you and your insights, Alex. Thank you so much. We're going to see you back a little bit later, and so get back into that sound environment, because you sounded great to us. Thank you so much.